Hello and welcome to my video on the role of a form tutor. My name is Oliver Furnival. If you'd like to see this video on my websites, please go to teachingandlearningresources.com and ibcoordinator.com. This video comes along with a booklet that I've written which gives a lot more detail than I'm going to give on this video today. If you have any questions about my video today, please email me oliverfurnival@gmail.com. So as you can see, today's video is the role of a form tutor. Also known as a homeroom teacher if you're teaching in a non-British context. This video comes from 16 years experience that I've had in the role of a form tutor, and I'm going to be using the experiences to go through examples today, but none of the examples will give away any identity of any students that I've taught in the past. So here's the first set of contents. I'm not going to read them out to you, I'm sure you can read them yourself. Press pause on the video if you want to skip to different sections. That's the first part. And the second part of the contents are here. Okay, so for the introduction, I believe that the form tutor is the most important, or one of the most important parts of being a teacher, no matter what age and no matter in which country. It's a part of the job that I've really always felt strongly connected to, so I'd like to share some of my ideas with you today to maybe give you some new ideas maybe on your role in whatever school you're at. From my experience, I'm a secondary school teacher. I've taught horizontal and vertical forms throughout my time in education. As we can see for each screen, I'll have my, obviously the title, and underneath there are quotes, and these quotes are from either parents or they're from students that I've met throughout my career, and I hope that they kind of emphasise what the screen's trying to say. So we can see here from the quote, you've been a tutor, friend, inspiration, a teacher, and at times almost a parent. I think that's quite a nice quote to show the big variety in the role of the form tutor. At different times in the day, different times over the year, you have to be a lot of different roles to students in helping them get through, which can be for some students a difficult part of their life, which is secondary school education. I put here a list of ways that you can make a change to a student's life in school, and you can see you can motivate the student. You can be the one teacher that can be the student, that can be the aid to get that student going if they may be at a pause in their progression throughout their school life for whatever reason. And another important role of the form tutor is you can really be important here in improving the self-worth of the student. Sometimes they can be the forgotten student throughout the day, and it's your job as a form tutor in those 20-25 minutes per day to actually build the student's self-esteem. Linked to that is a big sense of you creating a community as a form tutor, making each student feel important and included in your form. It's no good, as you'll come to see throughout this presentation, just focusing on the X% of students who are willing to give their opinion, etc. all of the time, but it's actually making them all feel included. Giving students a voice, that can come from many different ways as a form tutor. It could be just one-to-one talking, it could be through group talking, it could be helping them onto the student council, it could be you, the only one who wants to listen to their ideas about what's going on in school. So needing a voice for a student going through their teenage years could be on a wide range of topics. It could be divorce, death in the family, which obviously as we go through life, problems in school, bullying, etc. Some students, of course, need direction. You as a form tutor are certainly one of the focal points there in directing students, hopefully to make the right choices through their time at school. Also, an important part of being a form tutor is providing a safe place in the school. That can be the form room, before school, break, lunch, after school, depending on how much you want to give. But often students need that place where they can feel secure, where they know the other people, and a form tutor is really important in creating that sense of community. I'd like to start, I'm not going to read through this to you, but I'd like to start by giving a quote from a teacher called Brian Teeley, who was the head of Year 7 when I started my first role as a form tutor, just after my training from 2002 to 2003. And I'd like this to be kind of emphasised all the way through that he said, you'll be, as a teacher, as a form tutor, very aware of all the loud students, the one who will gladly come in, tell you their news, the confident ones, the naughty ones, they're the ones who will take your time up, but you must take an interest in all students in your form. They all deserve the equal attention of you. Some students may be quiet, and that's fine. They might not need to become the person that speaks at the end of the front of class at the end of their time at school. Some of them might want to but can't, and it's your job as a form tutor to actually get to know all your students and help to bring them out of their shell if that's what they need. Don't let students become forgotten in your form. All students have an outside life. They all have things going on in school as well as outside of school. They all have interesting hobbies which you can bring out and get them to present on in form time. As I said, they're all growing up. They might not be the ones who are going to come and explain to you when something's happening, but you've really got to get to know their trust and get to know them to really make yourself approachable to students. So that's really something I'd really like to make clear throughout this presentation. And I will go through some activities such as hot topics that are good ways, which links to the quote from a girl who wrote that after she left school, saying that some topics that we did inform did actually help her coming from a shy student to someone who got confident and could then go on to college. And a vital part, it says here, being a form tutor is supporting them in growing their confidence in life as well as just through school. And that's really an important part of your role as a form tutor. So in this part, I'm going to focus on, well, the different ways of motivating students. And the quote you can see, you've always encouraged me to do my best and played a big part in my life. And it's really important as a film tutor that you're there to encourage your students, no matter how big or how small it feels. And that can be celebrating all types of success. If you get to know your students, you can, and they might be a little bit embarrassed, but you can flag up non-academic, out-of-school success that they've had, and you can bring in front of the form and get a round of applause and get any certificate they've got, get a copy of it, put it on the form wall as well. And of course, academic success is there to be celebrated as well as a form tutor. If your school is a school with house points, or things like prefects, and any success there, it's really a part of your role to really motivate students and really push them towards achieving. Another way of motivating for them is maybe there will be times when students do feel demotivated throughout their time at school. That could be an in-school issue, that could be an out-of-school issue. Your job as a form tutor is to make yourself be available to talk through them and try to get them through those difficult situations and not give up, as sometimes we all feel that we would like to do. One important thing as a form tutor is encouraging students to utilise their skills. Some students I've had in my forms over the years very skillful, but they're not at the place where they want to put their skills into practice. So it's your job to maybe do the uncool thing and say, yeah, well, actually, for you to enter that competition would be really good and for you, and get them motivated to do that. That's really important as a form tutor. The positive role model, that can come through many different scenarios as a form tutor, where you can show examples from your life to motivate them, to show that maybe you haven't necessarily had the straightforward, easy life. You're not this great academic that was born with their academic qualifications, but you can show through your work ethic, through punctuality, through politeness, through behaviour, through use of language as a positive role model with your form, and that really can rub off on your students. I think I'll come to these more later throughout, but things I did to motivate students was, one thing I did from the first day of school to the last is something called Boy and Girl of the Week, where through academic and non-academic reasons I chose a Boy and Girl of the Week, and every Friday they would be announced to the form. There'd be a letter home, which is really good for positive communication with parents, and they'd get some sweets. Make sure, of course, that sweets are allowed to be given out in your school. As I said, that can be through, you've heard from a history teacher, for example, who did a good piece of work, through to you've heard them being caring to another student outside of the classroom. Linked to Boy or Girl of the Week, what you can do is have an end of term raffle. You could keep a count of each Boy and Girl of the Week, and at the end of the term you put their names into a hat and you draw it out, and that student wins, for example, £10. And I put on the slide there, check if allowed. In schools I've worked at, that has been fine, but there might be policies where you can't give monetary gifts to students, so always check with that. But that's a really good way to motivate students throughout the term to know that there's a little bit of cash on offer, or there could be if they continue to do well at school. At the end of term, class vote is a good way of motivating students. I've used this for non-academic reasons, where I've got students to, at each end of half term, to nominate their peers for something they've done well in school. It's good to focus this on non-academic reasons to give students a sense of well-being, and also to help motivate them to be the people that their peers expect them to be and want them to be. And this is a really good idea to get students hopefully to feel better about themselves. So an end of term class vote. The prizes I often do for those are seasonal Christmas sweets or Easter eggs, for example. Another way of motivating students is through quizzes and competitions. Again, it can be non-academic. I'll come to the quiz later on in activities, but it's really good to do quizzes on things that are going on in society or music or television. Get students' interests up to motivate them to actually do well. A really good idea is to get students to write their quizzes as well, to motivate them to do something extracurricular. Motivating students will help with studies where necessary. I'll come on to that later in this presentation on exam years, whether that's GCSE, A-level, International Baccalaureate. But certainly motivating them through studies there's a lot to offer, and I believe that is coming up later in this presentation. Also to motivate them is to take part in the wider school and the wider community. As a citizenship teacher, the wider community is a big part of my job anyway. But within the school, getting them to be prefects, getting them to be mentors for other students is a really good way to motivate students to show that they do have skills that they can pass on and help others, whether or not that's academic. So the form activities. So in my career, we've usually the form for tutors. Of course, the important job is checking students in school. Taking in letter replies, etc. But that might be the 5-minute morning slot, but then you have 20 minutes in the afternoon, for example, and what do you do with the form? Well, I believe that there should be something done that goes on every day in form. Very, very, very rarely should it just be a sit and slouch for 20 minutes, okay? It should be really something that's well thought out. And it might be that once a week in your school you have an assembly, so really you're just left with 4 slots of 20 minutes each week. I've spoken about quizzes and competitions. Best time for a quiz for me would be a Friday quiz. As I said, I did it in many different ways. Sometimes it would be a news quiz. Sometimes I would let the students write it. It might be something that's going on, as I said, on television shows that they're watching. Really good to put them in pairs with students they're not necessarily best friends with, and then that builds up relationships and community in the form. And the quizzes every Friday I would have a prize. It is a really good, nice and positive end of the term. Nowadays we can do these quizzes on Kahoot, Quizlet, etc. Make them more interactive. Competitions, things like football World Cups, where again check if it's okay with money, but in my time as form tutor I've given students, they'll give £1 in, they'll pick a team out, and the winner takes the prize money home for that. Something I mentioned earlier from a previous student is Hot Topics. Hot Topics is where you, the form tutor or the student, picks a topical debate, does a little presentation on it, a couple of minutes, for and against, pros and cons, and then it's opened up into either group discussion or a whole form discussion. And as you build up with your form and you build, the students build a sense of security, you'll notice that even the quieter ones will join in on that, as shown from the quote from the student before. As I say, those can be really important, serious ones, or also they can be done as just a little bit of fun at the end of the school day or just after lunch, whenever your form is. Something I used to do a lot is music lyrics, where you'd get either you again or the students could bring in musical lyrics, link it to literacy, try to work with English teachers there, if that's what's going on in the school at the time, and try to bring out the lyrics of songs. Of course, you've got to be careful with language there, and it's a good chance to be able to play music with students and allow them to discuss what's going on in the songs. Some schools may say you have to do reading. In my last school in England, we had to do reading once a week. My big point here is if you do reading with a form, make sure all types are okay. What I mean is it doesn't have to be, you can get these book boxes sometimes in schools where students just pretend to look at a book for 15, 20 minutes a day and put it back, and the next day they're picking up the same book. What I like to do as a form tutor is get magazines, get students to bring in their own magazine library of football, music, etc. magazines, National Geographics, and then students can read something that they actually care about, so the reading is actually beneficial to them. Active reading is really good, where you could get a shared piece of reading for the form. You could give them it the night before to differentiate for people that take longer to read. Otherwise, it can just be a nice light bit of reading, even from the internet, a news app or something, where they can all read, and then you can bring that into people to respond to the news reading story. Linked closely with news of the day, you can play quick clips of a news story from the night before. Now with the internet, it's very easy to do, where students can actually watch something that's going on in the news, and it can provoke discussion as well. Something else good in form is YouTube, DVD or video clips. This can be student choice for a little bit of fun, or it can be linked to an event that's going on. Again, you'll need to work with students beforehand to check that what's being watched is applicable to your school policies on what is allowed as well. General talks as whole forms, which could be led by you, or could be something on topical information. It might have just come from the student council, it might have been something that's going on in the school, it might be a student's response to a new school rule, etc. That's a really good time for students to be able to, in a slightly less formal way, to be able to talk in front of a member of staff about an issue that they really care about. Another good thing to do is communication games. I've just put a couple of ideas there: speed questioning, find someone who. These are really good opportunities to get students in your form to talk to each other. So with speed questioning, where you have a line of questions on one side, it can be anything from their hobbies or to their views on something, and they all have a minute to talk, and then they all move around the table, talk to as many people in one go. That's really good. Find someone who is similar. Find someone who's done, who went to the local museum at the weekend, and then that can be used to, of course, start discussion with the students. So within your 20 minutes, really, I think it's a good time for you to really be creative and think about things that you can do with the students. But my main point here is that it's not a wasted 20 minutes. Even a general talk made up based on something that the kids have been talking about from period 1 in a lesson is a really good way for students to be able to communicate with others and build up a sense of community in your form. The informed room is a really important part of the of your role as a form tutor. All the things listed here I've had on the wall in my form, and I've really tried to make the form room a place where the students feel that they own it. As teachers, we often have lots of work on the boards, but I think there should at least be one wall that is your form wall. So just going to quickly go through some of these ideas that I've had on my form rooms in the past. The first thing is achievement board, where, as I said earlier, if students are achieving out of school or in school, then you just have a board with the certificate on. Keep it updated, of course. It's something there for 3 years before it might lose motivation. A positive comment board, an activity I did periodically in my forms, has been to you write a student's name, and then you ask the next student to anonymously write something positive about that student. They fold the paper, they pass it on, and what happens is students are passing around. It can be done easily in 15-20 minutes. Positive comments about different students in their form, and what you can do is you can collate all those comments. And I made a nice brick wall display, and on the wall we have this student and the top 3 things that their peers have said. Now this has been done for me up to years 12 and 13, so I don't think, you might think, oh, that's a primary activity, but believe me, students really do enjoy reading what others have said about them, and it does give them a nice sense of worth and a little bit of feeling as part of a community in form. I've spoken about boy and girl of the week. Yeah, have the name on the board, and quiz winners posted on the board. Nothing too original there, but it's nice. It's a nice bit of fun. They can see their name up in lights. It might be the only time that week, that year, that they've had their name on a classroom wall. A merit board. I've put original merit board there. If you do work in a school that has merit system, I've made each student's name, that they've had to create their own name, and within that name we put the merit stickers on there. So you've got a whole part of a wall where you've got the name of every student in your form, nice and colourful, and on there you then tally their merits up, rather than just having a bland lined piece of paper with their names on. Make it that they actually feel some kind of association with, and hopefully to motivate them to do better in school. Form characters board. Well, as a form tutor, I've always tried to build a bit of fun into it, where we get kind of friends of the form, for example. So examples of my form characters. One we got here, Mr. Blobby, which I've had on my tie every Friday. Blobby Friday with my form. You know, slightly ironic. Bit of fun there. I had Paul Allen, a former Tottenham Hotspur player, who I got him to sign a message to my form to motivate them. We've had all kinds of characters, from Ian Beale to Alan Partridge, people that come up in the discussion, come up in the in-form jokes, if you like. Have a nice board where those are on there, and then the students can actually associate that. Because believe me, when they leave school and they write about their experiences, they remember things like that, and they enjoy that. Form promise is a good idea to have on your classroom wall, where you get the students to create their own form promise. It may sound cheesy, but something that they feel they're going to do this year, whether that's about how they'll behave in school, how they will do their homework, whatever targets they want. I've done that as a form promise, which means that you might have a lot of ideas, and then it's got to be debated down to top 1, 2, 3 ideas for the form. The form promise, you make sure that every student signs it, laminate it, stick it on the form wall. It's also good to point back to them if you can ever see that they're breaking the promise. Form photos. Photographs of sports days, photographs of assemblies, events, of just students hanging out themselves. Just get a nice collage of photographs. Again, another thing which allows them to feel, this is my form room, I'm part of this form, I belong. It nice and brightens up the form as well. Students work in form time, and I'm going to come on to PSHE later. Often you'll be doing work with students. It might be from focus days. Put it on the wall as well. Even take from other subjects. If the subject teacher doesn't want it and you notice that's from your student, on this form room wall, have it up there for the students. I allowed, and this is something you may not wish to go down, but I allowed students to leave their bags and other equipment in my form. There were rules for this. They couldn't just walk in halfway through my lesson, but I'd have certain times of day where they're allowed to come and leave if they didn't have a locker, leave their bags and other equipment, and that's there for their room. But along with that does come responsibility, and there are times when you have to reinforce the responsibility of that. Another thing I did was have an open form room at lunch and break. This was really appreciated with students from year 7 all the way through to year 11. Again, this is totally up to you, and if your school allows you to do this, but we could do this in the schools I've worked at. Actually, it's actually allowing students, if they've got nowhere to go, to have a safe place. Form room at lunch or break. If the weather's bad, if it's raining, etc., they can come and sit down. It may be sometimes that they want to bring friends from out of form, and that's up to you how fine that is and how many you can have in your room. As I say, it might be that every now and again you have to curtail the noise, etc. You've really got to build the trust up with students before you do that, and that does take a lot of time. And of course, that takes away sometimes it might be that you just want to get away from kids for your hour lunch break or the break time, and that's totally up to you. But it's something I did, and I believe that really does go well to the relationship with the form tutor and the students, because it is something that's really appreciated. So, if you look at this quote at the top here, you've helped me through so much, always giving me advice about things. It's helped me to know I've always got you there when I'm feeling down. So one part, a really important part of the form tutor, is to actually mentor students. So as going through life, the teenage years or 11 upwards, there are lots of things that students find difficult. It could just be a simple argument with friends. It could be a big family dilemma. It could be, as I've said, a death in the family. And it might be that you're the only adult that the student feels that they can talk to. The first thing I'd like to say on this is actually point C there, is that you really must make sure you know your school guidelines and policies at all times. And it goes without saying that if a student tells you something they believe is confidential and can't be confidential, you've got to make it very clear to the student that if they're going to tell you it, then you need to pass it on to the person responsible. So there are times when I believe that needs to be made clear to students at the beginning of any mentoring, maybe even to the whole room at first, because you don't want to go down the road where they've said something and they feel you're breaking trust. When it comes down to it, you've got to go by your school guidance, you've got to go by your school policies at all times. And I've found the head of safeguarding in schools a really important person for the form tutor to work with. So mentoring comes in when the student feels that there's a sense of trust, and that that will maybe come overnight with some students, but with others that would take longer, and that's between you and that student. But some of the activities I've said about, and letting students know that you are there, you are their number one teacher to go to in the school, does help build a sense of trust with them. Part B, really important, don't push a student. People will speak when they want to. Don't keep pushing, because then people might feel backed into a corner. They may feel they've started to tell you something and they don't want to. And it can be difficult, but it's really important to let the student do it in their own time. And it can be, again, good where if you feel that they've dried up with you, it might be that you're male or you're female and they'd rather speak to the opposite sex. Then you go to, as I said, safeguarding, you go to the student school counsellors to speak about that, of course with the student knowing at all times. A really important part of the form tutor, is listening, and of course that's really important as a teacher. You've got to listen to the students and you've got to allow them to talk. It might be easy to think you've got the solution straight away and you want to butt in, but really, I think what is really appreciated by students if they know that you can listen. It might be they don't want you to do anything. It might be they just want to rant about something going on at home or with a friend or in school, and they just need someone to listen. They might ask you for advice, and you've got to allow them the time to talk and ask you for that advice or what to do next. Another important thing linked to that is not judging. We've all got our own ideas, we've all got our own ethics and morals, but we've got to put ourselves, and empathy comes up in a minute, into the shoes of other people. Don't judge. If you don't agree with what they've done or what they're going to say, and you make that very clear, then they're going to lose the trust in you to speak. It might be that you disagree, but there are different ways and times to say that, and understand that people have different experiences throughout teenage years and life that we do. So that links to part F, showing empathy, trying to think how it is for somebody else, and maybe their life is not maybe as easy as ours. I've kind of covered G, liaise with appropriate staff and mentoring students. H is to show a student that the form cares about them. Now, it might not be applicable to do this for every time, you might not need to, the student might not want you to, but I've had situations where students have had something going on outside of their life where the rest of the form have known about it, so us as a form have brought presents and made cards for this student. Remember, this is secondary. Made cards and presents for this student and given it to them. And that's, they're things that the kids will not forget, and that student really appreciated it, and it shows them that they've got people on their side. So really, where applicable, show that the form cares about them. As I said, it might not always be necessary, it might not always be advisable, but where it is, then I believe that's a really powerful message, and it's worked in the past very well for me. Another thing of mentoring, students like to complain sometimes about other teachers. Now, of course, you've got, you've got to really be careful here. You can't just, agree that yes, Mr. or Mrs. X is a load of rubbish, and yes, they do shout too much, etc. A good thing you can do as a form tutor is to liaise between them, and it might be that the teachers even started this off and wants an apology from a student who's dug their heels in, backed into a corner, and it might be you as the form tutor who knows them better that can speak to them and explain to them the right ways forward. I find that can really work well as a form tutor. What you must do though is be fair. You mustn't take everything as given. You must of course find out what really has gone on when doing this. You don't want to offend colleagues. You've got to show professionalism at all times, so you can't start arguing with the students, say yes, I'm a better teacher kind of thing. That's not what it is, and if you do that, the trust will be lost from the member of staff and also from the student as well, if you seem to be two-faced. So they've really got to play it straight back with that, and it just can be that the form tutor could be someone who knows the student perhaps better than the subject teacher, and can be there to liaise and help with the mentoring. You will, unless you're extremely lucky over the years, have difficult students in your school who may be on the verge of being excluded from school, and I think as a form tutor there, it's really important to offer your services to the head of year or the head of subject, whoever it is who's dealing with this situation, even the head teacher when it gets more serious. Because you as a form tutor can be there and can because you're not directly involved in the incident, you could be one step away and you could give advice to these difficult students. I'm not saying I've cured every problem every difficult student's ever had. I have had students excluded from my form, but none of them have left not knowing that I've been there to listen, to try to put policies and practices into place to support them, and to explain to students why they're there. And also, if you have a student on report card, it's nice. A behaviour report card, it's nice at the end of the day to just appear at the head of year's office as a form tutor, just to see how they've done and give them a well done if they've had a good, successful day at school, and to let them know that although they're having a difficult time through behaviour, for example, at school, then not everybody's against them. You're there, you're following the school rules, you're going to put the rules into practice the same as any other teacher, but you're letting the student know that you as a form tutor have got your eye out for them, and you care about what's going on. There will of course be times as a form tutor where students in your form will not get on, and it might be that they feel that you might be taking one side over the other. So it's really important that if there are difficulties between students in your form, which there probably will be if you're having the same form for 5 to 7 years, that you again are playing it very straight, that you make it very clear, and that you try to put things into place to help the situation with the students in your forms. I've had success at doing this. I've also had it where it hasn't worked. Friendships have broken up, or there's been a big disagreement where you try to have meetings, you try to give students time alone, or with you as the neutral person in the room to take down what's been said and try to ask how they feel, and it doesn't always work out. But as a form tutor, it doesn't mean you stop doing that, it doesn't mean that you give up doing that. You're if the problems come from someone else, head of year, etc., then it might be that your job is to be someone who looks out over how the relationship's going with the students. Okay, so as form tutor, I think it's really important to mentor students and try to get ways where we can move forward as a form. A big important part of the teacher and the form tutor is relationship with parents. Of course, we've got the student, parent, teacher triangle here. So we've got the quote there: "We can never thank you enough, as I'm sure so-and-so could have been a disaster story, but thanks to your care and she's not done badly at all." There you can see your parents do really appreciate the communication with the form tutor. Now this, along with a lot of the things I'm telling you in this video, does take a lot of time. And I'm just going to go through some of the ways that you need to communicate with parents. I think the first thing to show is achievements. It's really, it's nice to be able to contact a parent with something good that's happened with someone in your form. Whether or not, as I said earlier, it's a letter home through Boy or Girl of the Week, or it's on a form evening, or a tutor form meeting, or a phone call, just to say, this student has done well in school, and parents really do appreciate that. So yeah, you're going to need to speak to parents on a wide range of issues as well, such as the student's progress, such as behaviour problems. You can read these, truancy, things that the parents need to know. And my advice as a form tutor is really build up the relationship with the parents to be able to do this. I always took extra time on parents' evenings with the parents of my form. And I got to know the families like that, and I'm pleased to say that years and years later I'm still in touch, still Christmas cards from some parents that I've been form tutors of. It's really important to get that relationship, so when you're ringing up and saying, sorry, your son or daughter's not turned up to school today, they're not automatically on the attack or overly defensive, because they know that you've really got their child's best interests at heart. So I really think that beginning of year you have if you can, if it's in your school's culture, have a meeting with all the parents, and if you do workshops throughout the year on the students in the form, as well as the usual teacher-parent conferences. So even though you are building up relationships with the families, you've still got to be the one on the front line to explain about some of these things, behaviour problems, issues in lessons, and really act as in different times. Sometimes you're going to be the one who has to keep the child maybe in detention, sometimes you're going to be the one who's got to actually liaise between that child and the rest of the school to try and solve a problem. There might be times when the parents have an issue with the school, and because they know you better than any other teacher, they come to you, and it might be your job then to go and speak to whoever to sort the situation out. Be careful with parents in making promises you can't keep, in just agreements on the phone. It might come back to bite you, because they might say, well, Mr. X said this, so this is what I believe. So you've really got to, again, stick to what is right in the school and the ways, your school policies as well. But it is really important, through good and bad, that we have this relationship with parents, so that the parents know that whatever the situation, whether it's you ringing them up to say they're late, or they haven't given in their coursework for French or whatever, that they know that you're doing that on their side, and because you need to see them making the right ways forward within school. So this is just an overview more of what goes on in parents. I've gone through a lot of this. One thing I'd like to say on Parents' Evening, even if it's a Parents' Evening, I'm a citizenship teacher and they're not in my citizenship lessons, try to make even a quick 2 minutes, how's X doing here or there. And one good thing to do for parents is make sure that you read your forms report, so that you can talk to your parent about what's going on in geography, science, French, and so you know, and the parents know, that you know how they're doing, you know the issues they're facing, so that you've always got one step ahead, and therefore they feel that you're connected and you're the person that they can feel trusted to talk to. So there's a few further comments from parents. I don't need to read them all out to you. You can see them there. But it just shows that parents do really appreciate support and encouragement. Little things, as I said, like letters home for boy and girl of the week. You've got a letter. You just change the name every week. You change why they got it. That goes home. Parents really do appreciate that. And they really appreciate the fact that you're there. Some of the things I'm talking about there, the effort you're putting in forms, the encouragement you're giving students to recognise their skills, as this parent said, and to actually take those skills forward. So I think for the role of the form tutor with the parent is that you're there, you're the number one main teacher in the school, and whether the student's doing well or not so well, that you're the first port of call, and you will have the students back. And yes, it might mean you make difficult decisions, but they know the reasons why you're doing it. So keep communication with parents consistent throughout your time as a form tutor. This lesson, very British slant on it, might be different if you're watching from a different country, and it also might be different in different schools. But in my school we have a subject called Personal, Social and Health Education, and it usually is, I think usually, where the form tutor may take that lesson with their form. And if it's done badly, it can go wrong. It could be like, oh, this is a lesson once a week where we can just sit and do nothing and just sit and waste the hour. And I believe that this lesson, I'm going to call PSHE, is an excellent opportunity for you to build relationships with students, and for you to be able to talk to students as a form tutor about things that maybe the 20 minutes a day form time doesn't give you enough time to do, and maybe that they don't get another chance at school to say. Again, this comes through trust, and this comes through you being seen as a teacher that they can go to, someone who's going to listen, someone who's going to care, and someone who's going to make an effort. Hard to teach that, it's just that you've got to be that as a form tutor. So this subject is a subject where they can talk about things, as it says here, drugs, sex, assertiveness, law, bullying, parent divorce, and important in these lessons is to understand that students come into it with their own experience, their own views, and their own knowledge. You know, I'm now 43 years old, and it might be that, you know, to them, 30 years, God, younger than me, they're seeing things from their point of view, and it would be a bad lesson as a form tutor for me to talk about how things were in the 1990s, and this is how we do things, when they might say, well, actually, this is what's going on in my life. So it can work both ways. You can learn from students in this situation. On my Teaching and Learning YouTube channel, I've got lots of different classroom activities, interactive classroom activities, so please look at those. They're also on my website, so I said at the beginning of the channel, at the beginning of this video, sorry, which will allow you to do interactive classroom activities around these issues. It might be that you're a teacher that doesn't feel that this is your strongest point, talking about personal things like sex and drugs. If it's on the national curriculum, then that has to be taught. But it really is important that you're allowing students, through you managing it, to actually take the lead in these lessons. These lessons must be respected by all. As I said, it shouldn't be wasted as an hour wasted. And in order to get that respect, make them interactive and also allow students to lead these lessons. So it could be that you give them a week's notice, say, I want a 10-20 minute activity presentation on this topic for next week, and therefore the students actually feel included in something that they feel ownership of. And you as a form tutor are there with, if when need be, with the law of the situation, how it is in your country, and then you can talk about the rights and wrongs around that. So yeah, also in PSE, it might be that 1 hour of a week, PSHE, sorry, where you've got the students together in your form, and it's a good time to allow them to work with students that they don't necessarily mix with out of that hour. Building up social skills, building up communication skills, that's really important. Later on, I'll talk about how this 1 hour can be used to help students with their upcoming exams. I believe it's really good to have a nice end of term, half term. So it might be that whether you've got 2 or 3 terms a year, you can split that in half. It might be if you're lucky enough to work in a country or an international school where you have the half term holidays. So when I taught in England, it's around every 6 weeks. So it's really good to have the positive note there so that they can go away for their 1 week, 2 week or 6 weeks holidays if it's the end of the summer, at the end of the spring term into summer, with real good memories. Because remember, these are things that they're going to remember long into their future. One good thing to do is bring food and drinks, getting them to do it in for the last hour. A really enjoyable experience. I like, as I've mentioned before, about end of term achievement awards. As I said, a good one is getting students in the form to nominate people with a reason, and when I say the winner is of the pupil, the boy or girl of the term, read out what others have said to them. And actually sometimes when students who maybe have a bit of low self-esteem, things haven't gone very well, for them to stand there, a bit embarrassed, for me as a form tutor to read what their peers anonymously have said about them, is actually sometimes got a little bit emotional and really kind of works to gel the students in and teach them how, acting well to each other and not, selfishly just saying, oh, I want the chocolate, but nominating someone else can really give them a sense of well-being and feeling good about themselves. A good way to spend the last hour, it says here, is to speak about what they've achieved that term. As I said, not just within the classroom, but how they've been around the school, highlight different successes that the students have had throughout that term. Extracurricular activities. So depending on your school, there might be different things, different times for you to interact with your students outside of the PSE and outside of the form time each that you have each day. You can see the quote here, this, thank you for visiting me on work experience. Despite locking yourself out of your car, I'll never forget that. So work experience is something that is either done in years 10 or 11 in England, where the students go off to do 2 weeks out of to actually work in the real world, and they should be visited by a member of staff at the school. I, as a form tutor, always try to make sure that I get to as many out of my form as I can, and that might mean that you have to go outside of the school working hours. Often these are done in the summer months, where maybe you've lost your year 11 or 13 who are on exam revision or doing exams, so you might have a little bit more time in the school day to do that. So go and see them on work experience. As you say, they'll never forget, yeah, once I did lock myself out of the car on the way, and to try and ask 2 students to break into my car and to get the keys out, and they couldn't. Otherwise, festivals of sports days is a great time. Not just, in most schools we arrange the teams for sports for days, but obviously supporting them. I've made banners before, embarrassingly. Going, if it's a hot day, going and get drinks, so you can have a little treat at lunchtime with them. Again, asking them to nominate students who they feel gave the most to the team throughout the day. You know, really go a little bit over the top, you know, the extra support. And on things like this, it's really what I've really found. If I've got a friend who's got another form tutor in the same year or the same house, then it's good to build up some kind of form rivalry, all in good fun, of course. Focus days are days when we have maybe 1, 2, 3 days off timetable, usually in the final term of the year, where it might be that you spend 3 days on the Model United Nations, or you might spend 3 days on enterprise, business and enterprise within my school. And it's really good then to work with your form. And it might be split into different groups to really go around. If you're leading it or not, you find the free time and you check what they're doing in those focus days. And again, really building a sense of you're with them in this situation. Assemblies are excellent. Do as many as you can. Get them form-led, you know, usual plays, scripts, with whatever message the school's doing at the time. Assemblies are really good because it gives kids a chance to speak in front of the whole year group that they might not be used to, and it also has great memories. You can get the other teachers to photograph as well, put it on the wall, and there's certainly something that I believe as a form is a great way to get a common bond. School sports teams, you might have students who play for the school netball, football team, rugby team. It's really good if you can in the evening, if it's a home match or not too far away, to actually just turn up and watch every now and again, and that really does mean a world to the students, and then you can bring it up in form the next day. So yeah, really supporting them in their out of school success. It might be that every now and again you're going to get a student that goes higher and higher, and it might be that you can arrange different teachers or different students to go and make it more formal school visit to watch them in action. When they're doing things, curriculum, extracurricular, what I mean by that is sometimes you have an art exhibition at school. So if your student's in the art exhibition, make sure that you go and visit, get other form students into it as well. Again, it's a little gesture. It's only the art gallery in a drama studio, 3 minutes to walk away, but to that student that will mean a lot. So this is for secondary school, or maybe SATs teachers in Britain as well for year 6. But yeah, at the end of secondary school in the last year, it might be that you've got your GCSEs, your A-levels, your IB diplomas. And you can see that, yeah, through that quote, you've always been there and I'm grateful. You see me cry, smile and laugh. There's going to be times, not just in exam years, where there's a lot of emotional stress and tension, and you're going to see that with your students. And the thing all you can do as a form tutor is you're there by their side at all times. A few just tips here on what you can do for exam years. I think it's worked well in form, the 20 minutes or homework or the PSHE time. So do things like revision guide, where let's say it's a subject they're all taking, maths for example, and they all take a piece of the curriculum and they collect the information and then they share it. Now, with the modern technology now, what I ask students to do is audio and visual presentations on that. Again, I've got a revision guide and videos on my website to help do that. But it's really good as a form, an activity where they've actually got something they can take away with that. Yeah, you can spend the form time, the 20-minute form time, going through revision websites or going through a Quizlet that's based on a subject's revision rather than the news, etc. Create a document on revision tips. You can get lots of information online now. Again, I've got one on my websites where you can find relevant information, new websites. Put it together for your form, give it to them. They will appreciate it. I've done a lot on exam stress. You might need other teachers, so you might not be the expert. I'm certainly not on this. Get other teachers to come in, do a little speech, do a little activity on beating stress throughout the exam session with the students. Revision quizzes as well, as I've just said. Get them to do those, make them more fun. You know, a quiz rather than a test. One word, it can make a big difference there. Linked to exam years is starting to think about jobs, creating CV. That's something you can do in PSE as well, as they're leaving the school year, leaving the school. link it, of course, to the stuff they've done on work experience, so actually have something that they can take out. It might be that your school has specialist staff to do that. In my schools in the past, then we have had that, but also as a form tutor, it's really good to show your one, go through it with the students, and get them to give them the helping hand as they go maybe on to the next stages. One thing you can do to support students is to allow your room as a quiet place. In schools I've worked at, we've had students on study leave. So if you've got a free period and they're on study leave, invite it to maybe come in, or even at break or lunchtime that day, say, well, actually it's a revision lunch today. And that, again, is something they know, they've got that area, and you can really do it. Just a little bit of extra help for your study leave, for your students to revising. The next few about, keeping an eye on students. They might be 16, they might be 18 or 19, 17 or 18, but they will get stressed. And it's important to be there, as I said, not pushing, but just letting them know that you're there, you can talk, you can maybe communicate with parents if they're finding a quiet space at home difficult, etc., which I've had to do in the past. Meeting students individually or in small groups, work with other school, with other subject teachers, and just offer support to meet with them and go through issues that they may be facing. I've done things like by creating revision timetables now, which I create as Google Docs, which students can then do theirs as it fits in with their life. In the old days, I've bought paper calendars, remember those, put them on the walls so they can actually create their own revision calendars. A good thing with students is a support network. I call this Team Me. It's a booklet that I've created where they look at who they've got to support them and different times, different places where they can go, who they can ask for help. Again, teachers, websites, past papers, all of that, which again I've done videos on, and just having that with students. It might be students need extra mentoring sessions. So I'm a citizenship teacher. I've also done history, so I've worked with history teachers in the past where I've become like the history mentor, the revision mentor with students in my form, just to give them a little bit of extra boost. And it might be, you don't have to be the subject specialist on that, but you could just be there to listen, because active revision for some students is a lot more productive than just sitting reading and forgetting what they're saying. Even if you're there as a form tutor, 10 minutes before form in the morning with some students doing biology, which I know absolutely nothing about, just asking them questions, asking them to explain things to you can really help them. Deadlines, as form tutor, deadlines are really important. You know what's coming up with the students throughout the 2-year process of the GCSE or A-level or IB course, and maybe even having classroom deadlines on the wall. I know we're moving more into the good technological way of doing that now, but even then you could advise students on how to create a joint class deadline sheet for them. A big thing about my views on being a form tutor is my stories. Look at the quote there. You're always making a form laugh with your pathetic gags and impressions of Liam Gallagher, Alan Partridge, Russell Brand, and Imogen. And a lot of that was things that I'm interested in, that I've put on the students, showing them Alan Partridge videos, making them listen to Oasis, etc. And this is where you've got to think, well, how much do I want to give? And there's no right or wrong answer here. But what I want to get across is that there has to be the boundaries. So I want to say that if you want to give information about you, your family life, your own hobbies, your interests, do. But what is vital is that you understand that all information you say to students, you might as well treat as public information, because obviously, rightly so, they're going to talk to their friends or parents, which is great, because sometimes parents come in on parent evenings and say, oh, I hear you've been to this place or that place, or I like that band or whatever. And then again, you've got that little bit of extra information with the parents to talk to. But don't ever tell students anything you don't want repeated, is what I'm trying to say. And always make sure you uphold professional standards. You are the teacher. You're not one of their friends group. You're not a friend, you're a professional teacher. But as a form tutor, it can be a great way of opening conversations, of getting a nice, as you can see, identity in the form of these characters we could all look at and laugh about and do impressions of, etc. But the professional standards is vital. So yeah, so a PSE can be using life experiences. Again, you don't want to say anything that you don't think is right for a professional teacher to say. However, it can be on non-controversial issues really good. Say, well, actually, this is what I've been through. This is how I've done it, and it might be that that's another way in. It's someone that they understand has been through situations. So I've chosen to talk about my children. I've had my children in on their days before they were at school and their non-school days, and my daughter's done the register with the form, etc. And that's up to you. With school concerts, where students in my form have been doing concerts, I've taken my children and kids in my form have babysat them in the crowd, because I always used to help out with the on and off, in the wings, on and off stage. I actually performed in a few myself. So that kind of can lead to a really nice, it's in a safe, secure environment, of course, in the school. Giving snippets of your life can be beneficial. The example I've given there is when I started, you won't believe it now, running half marathons. I did it for Diabetes UK, and telling my form about that, how I went from running nothing to a half marathon, resulted in a lot of the families of the form sponsoring me through that. So overall, that's up to you. My way of doing it was not everything, but I did like to include characters. These characters you can see here we'd have on the wall. We'd use some of their catchphrases. However, if you don't do that, that's fine. But don't do it if you don't ever put yourself in a situation where you're saying something you don't want the world to know, and maybe would be verging on the unprofessional. So linked to what I was just saying is the form culture. So over the years, you want to build a culture in the form. So I love this quote. I now find myself watching Alan Partridge and listening to Oasis. What have you done? So yeah, it's, you know, they might think, oh, that's really so uncool and whatever, but that's good. It's fine to be uncool. But just getting a little bit of, yeah, as I say, the music for when they're working or the comedy clips can build an identity. And even when now some of my original form are now 27 years old, when we have reunions, they will talk about that, and we'll quote Alan Partridge shouting down in the car park, which they saw absolutely years ago, which they still find funny, and which I think is really nice that we did as a form. Running jokes, catchphrases, etc. You can see mascots and puns are great to build into the narrative of your form. One year I left a banana in a 6 weeks holiday in my cupboard, and it had kind of like crystallised back in September. So we blue tacked it to the wall on a poster, and the mouldy banana was on our form wall until they left school. And the mouldy banana is still remembered by all students in my form. It's just a little bit of fun. It's showing just the community you can build up, and I said, a narrative of your form, and to build some kind of sense of, well, this is our joke, this is our community, this is our classroom. So everything I've said today in this presentation takes time. For you as a form tutor to give your time before school, the 20-minute break we had, then the lunch break, and where applicable after school, if there aren't meeting. Sometimes, yeah, it's a lot, and it can take your time up, and all the parent communication, etc. But I believe what you put in is kind of what you get out, and you take from the role. Yes, you could, in some schools, just go do the register, make sure everything's okay, and that's your job. But really, I think what you get out of the role really makes up and more for what you put into it. It is a lot of time, but I believe the rewards of that, in seeing the growth of the students, in seeing how they're responding, and in seeing how they are with each other, is really one of the most rewarding parts of the job. So yeah, as I said here, the pre-periods, maybe creating quizzes, revision guides, buying food costs money. The boy and girl of the week, you know, in my school in England, we was allowed to give sweets out. Yeah, so that's, you know, 2 packets of sweets every Friday for 5 years. Yeah, it's not going to bankrupt you, but it's a little bit of cash, and the £10 prizes, etc. But reward is that you've made a difference. No matter how small, you can make a difference, and you can see students who, through your attention, through your care, through your mentoring, through just you doing classroom activities, which you can see builds confidence, which gets them talking. That is something that will stay with them, and it will stay with you as they leave school. And as I've said there, no matter how small, it is worth every minute that you put in my opinion, and that's what makes, I believe, the form tutor role the most important and most enjoyable that I believe in education. I'd like to finish on this final comment, which is, I know I used to get the hump quite regularly, but now I realise you're doing the right thing, even though I couldn't see it at the time. I think this is really important. Getting a hump means to get annoyed. The fact that, you know, even though being a form tutor, you're trying to do your best for your students, it might be that at times they don't agree with what you're going to say, and that's quite natural. There are times growing up where we make mistakes. Even as adults, as teachers, we carry on making mistakes. What's important is that you always follow what you believe is right, what the school believes is right. A good form tutor doesn't agree with everything that the student is saying when you know that really they should take maybe a different path or look at it in a different situation. So it's really important that you are consistent in your role as a form tutor. And it might be, hopefully, that as this student did, they see that at the time they might have been really hurt because they feel they've got a really good relationship with you and you're now telling them something they don't want to hear. They might be thinking, well, I thought Mr. X would agree with me because they're my form tutor. When they look back on that and when they reflect on that, as they may well do as they're older, they can see that, yes, sometimes people need to be told, actually, no, I've got to go with a different way to go with this. And that's all done through caring. So, in summary to this presentation, I'd like to say that I've gone through a lot of different ways of being a form tutor, the things you can do to make your form time active, to make the most of every minute, whether it's a safe space in the school, whether it's mentoring students through a lot of different activities going on in their lives, helping them through education, helping them through extracurricular things going on as well, are the vital things in their life. In the role of the form tutor, It's really important that we keep the communication between the student, the form tutor, other subject teachers, other school members where applicable, and the parents alive, so all of the people within the relationship know exactly what is going on. So overall, yeah, it's just letting students know that you're there for them, that you put in all the effort for all the good things that go on in school, but really it's you having a look out for your students, to being there for someone that they might need to come and speak to on a wide variety of things, and whether they agree with you or not, that they understand that you're doing that as their form tutor and as someone that genuinely cares for the students. If there's anything in the video that you would like more clarification on, please do email me. You can see my email there, oliverfurnival@gmail.com. The booklet that comes with this video and the revision videos and the teaching activity videos available on my websites there, teachingandlearningresources.com and ibcoordinator.com. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation.